We've got results coming up for you later on in the show. For more, let's turn to California Congressman John Garamendi. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight.
Always a pleasure, Ed.
Been a war of words here. I think we're going default. I haven't seen anything in the last 24 hours that would change that at all. How's this end?
Well, presently it doesn't end in a very pretty picture for America. All the problems that you talked about and a whole lot more are out there. But as you said, all it takes is a vote. We could get a clean, continuing resolution, fund the government for the next month to 2 months, and then sit down and negotiate what we really need to do, which is a balanced approach to the deficit, and make sure that we fund those critical programs that are essential for the truckers, like how about a transportation plan, one where we actually improve and build the roads and make sure those bridges don't collapse below the truckers.
Well, that's a heck of a point. Because the president has been talking about infrastructure for a long time, has gotten no help from the Republicans at all. In fact, he's mocked quite often when he talks about infrastructure investment. And it's ironic that these truckers are going to be the first disruptors coming to Washington. They're the ones that are driving on the lousy bridges that the Republicans don't want to fix.
Well, there's some 16,000 of those bridges out there that are in serious need. They are considered to be at high risk. The president, in his budget, that the Republicans have refused to negotiate, actually called for a major infrastructure program to fix the bridges, to build the roads, to move this nation. It was part of his budget. In March of this year, his budget was on the table. The Democratic Senate and House budget was on the table, and the Republican budget was on the table. We have asked for a conference committee 19 times since March. Boehner has refused to appoint conferees on the budget, and guess what happens? Here we are with this crisis, manufactured by Speaker Boehner. This is the Boehner default that's coming down on us because he has refused to negotiate.
And let's talk about that default. I want to play this clip of Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma downplaying the effects of a default. Here it is.
There is no such thing as a debt ceiling in this country because it's never been not increased. And that's why we're $17 trillion in debt. And I would dispel the rumor that is going around that you hear on every newscast that if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we will default on our debt. We won't. We'll continue to pay our interest, we'll continue to redeem bonds, and we'll issue new bonds to replace those. So that it's not entirely accurate.
What's your reaction to that, Congressman?
Well, I think he ought to just get in his car and drive up to the Sage of Omaha and have a conversation with Mr. Buffett, who really understands finance, and obviously the good doctor doesn't have a clue what national, international finance are all about. He is absolutely dead wrong. This is a major crisis. If the United States were to default, it is a default crisis of unknown proportions, because never in the history of this country has the United States not been able to pay. And by the way, these are debts, these are obligations that are racked up by us in Congress over the last century. So we are going to pay our debts unless Speaker Boehner has his default crisis, and it's in his hands. He is the man that's controlling this entire game.
It is in his hands, and he is the one that can make the difference. I find it very interesting that, you know, they exonerate themselves from going to war and not paying for it. All of the things that have been off budget, all of the things that they don't want to pay for right now, which takes us to the generational conversation of what the conservatives have wanted to do all along is blow up the federal budget deficit, get government into a bathtub, but now they've taken it to DEFCON 4 and say, no, we're not even going to pay the bills. And the people who are going to get hurt are going to be the middle-class Americans. Wealthy people are going to take their money out of the market, they're going to sit on it, they're going to cut their losses, and they're going to ride this thing out. Nobody wealthy, John, is going to be hurt by this. You agree with me on that?
Well, that's certainly been the case thus far. You take a look at what's happened since the great crisis of 2007 and 8. 95% of all the wealth that this country has created in those 5-6 years has gone to the super wealthy, the top 1%.
They're going to park their money. They're going to park their money. They're going to sit this thing out. The poor, the middle class, the minorities of this country are the ones that are going to be destitute. You're going to see belt tightening big time. You're going to see corporations are going to be cutting payroll. You're going to see every industry hurt if we default. And it's all because of Boehner's ego and his speakership. How else do we read
that's
it?
correct. I'm afraid that's correct, and it's a great tragedy. We don't need to be here. We can go right across now in the next 15 minutes, vote that continuing resolution out. And by the way, the continuing resolution actually is a very difficult compromise for Democrats.
It is. It's their numbers.
It is, when they say it's their number, it's actually $80 billion less than the president and the Democrats wanted to spend in the coming year.
Yeah.
So it is a very significant. It also includes all of those foolish sequestration things.
Congressman John Garamendi of California, good to have you with us, John. Thank you.
Always.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time tonight. Of course, we'll have much more on the shutdown ahead. Remember to answer tonight's question there at the bottom of the screen. Share your thoughts with us.